Hello and welcome to another episode of Casual Friday. I'm talking to the duck. The markets look, well, they've moved at least. I think that's fair to say since the last Casual Friday. And there's been no shortage of news either. So plenty to cover. I'm with Don, as always. We're going to be interrogating his buys, which is, I think, a ritual on the show now. Anytime you take a trade, because we both know I don't trade, right? So, like, there's nothing to say on that front. But anytime you take a trade, it's like the Spanish Inquisition all up in this bitch, you know? So today is going to be no different. But how are you? How's life? How's your personal life, which is the most interesting thing I think throughout all of this? What's new in the pond?
No, I mean, not that much. I'm good. Feeling like a little bit under the weather, but that's probably because I've been carrying furniture up and downstairs.
Nice.
Um,
Functional training.
yes. But no, otherwise good. Besides having my Twitter by people calling me an idiot all the time, it's all good,
Nice.
really.
Yeah, seems like you can't tweet about markets without getting insulted nowadays, which is
Oh, yes,
very
yes. But
telling
how
of
are
the
you?
environment. Yeah, I'm fine. Anyway, so back to the stuff that actually has some substance. I'm gonna
Yes.
throw up the monthly chart on BTC USD, right? And
Hmm.
these are levels we've been speaking about for like a year, basically, in one form or another. So
Hmm.
20k was the wick of the previous cycle, and that broke down. And then the candle body that we spoke about, like deeper into cyclical levels, starts around 14k, and you can layer it to like 12, whatever, right? That kind of pre-breakout shelf before the bull market really went crazy. So at face value, someone can say, hey, look, you were buying 20k for a bit and trading around that position. That made sense. Now that's broken down. The next support is 14k, but you're buying like 16.5k. What are you doing?
I mean, I'm not entirely sure if it's gonna go to 14K or not. And I mean, this is not necessarily a trade. It's something I plan on holding for quite a while. Essentially, like basically more than a year because I don't have to pay taxes and stuff that I hold for more than a year.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not necessarily a trade. It's just me locking in an entry, and if it goes to 14K, I'll take trades there. Um, so yeah, it's not as interesting as it sounds when I say, "Hey, I bought," because it's not a trade. It's just me investing. Like back in the day, back when Bitcoin was trading below 1K, I bought, and I basically was like, "Okay, I'm going to hold this, trade it around a little bit, but I want to have like crypto exposure." Went all the way to 20K. I sold 17, and then I was like, "Okay, I'm just trading this thing now because I don't know, I just don't want to invest anymore." And well, we've had a bear market in between, we've had a bull market, but now we're pretty much exactly at those prices again. Where back then I was like, okay, this is not the investment I want to make. I just want to be trading this thing. And now that I feel like taking it a little bit easier on the trading side and a little bit more aggressive on the investing side because um, it's just healthier in my opinion. Just doesn't you don't need to sit in front of the computer all day. You can just put your money in and just see what it does basically for you. And that's kind of what I'm doing here. I will still be trading, obviously, but I don't want to be only focusing on that. So I'm back in the investing game that I basically left at 17K. Feel like being able to like close that out back in 2018, trade with all my capital, and now kind of rethink strategies just kind of makes sense. And if it doesn't go to 14K and I didn't do this, I would just not be buying. I know myself that well. Like if it goes to 20K, I'll just be like, okay, I will trade this level, but I will not put on a long term position. So for me, this is close enough to 14K. It's also basically, I'm very surprised by the strength that we've put in, despite the worst news that we could have. So I'm just like, okay, I'm going to buy some now. I'm going to trade. If it goes to 14K, I'm going to trade around it. If we go higher, I'm going to trade. But I want to have at least a little bit of this at these kind of prices.
So it's
And that's
setting
kind of
up
what
a
I'm doing.
minimum 1 year hold core investor position in crypto,
Yes.
basically. I also think
Because
the
I haven't had
context is
any of that.
helpful, right? Because like you got rid of your stuff at like below 60k ish, right? Sort of
Yes.
50, 58, whatever. Sort of
Hmm.
high, low to the sort of mid to high 50s, right? So you
Yes, because
rebuying that after dumping it there, you rebuying here after dumping it there is like a very different trade to someone just like outright leverage longing this level, for example. Like you can
yes.
afford so much slack when it comes to this thing, given where you sold. Like the relative purchasing power on your coins is, much higher than for most people, so to speak.
Yes, I mean the thing is, like back then, I basically was just denominated in Bitcoin. So I had my trading portfolio. I would trade it around basically always, and I closed that trading portfolio down basically at 58, 57, somewhere around there when we lost the range high,
Yeah.
and I have been like kind of dipping my toes into it, left and like right, pretty much every single time we've bounced a little bit. I've been involved for like at least a day, if not a week. But I haven't really liked the price action every single time. So I just kind of jumped in, jumped out. But this is supposed to be like, I mean, if crypto goes to zero, it goes to zero, right? But we're all in this space because we don't think that is necessarily going to happen. And we think that there's some upside to be had. So if I want to make an entry down here, I'll still I'm still fine with buying lower. It's just close enough, basically.
Yeah. I get that. I think just the context is useful that it's a 1 year investment tax type of optimization, and then also the fact that you have the luxury of doing so given where you sold is like a completely different trade, I think, than how it's perceived on Twitter, which maybe explains some of your mentions at the very least. If we put our trader hats on and look at this thing, I think the thing that jumps out is that the market went sideways for like 2-3 months or whatever. Since June,
Yes.
it went sideways until the end of October, and then it broke down from that multi-month range. And you and I were sort of discussing the potentials or the potential for a 6K style analog in that price action, where the market reaches a big level, it sticks around, and then when that breaks out, that's like bearish. And that's kind of what happened, right? Like the market broke down.
Yes.
Technically speaking, the argument that I've made is, hey, if you want to kind of high time frame trade this, sort of 12 to 14-ish is some sort of shelf. Above 20 is also structure. But my primary concern is that there isn't like a ton of structure like right here between those levels, Like a bit higher is clearer, a bit lower is clearer as well, but this seems to be like technical no man's land. And the thing is, like, for me personally, I got to have a really good setup or really good structure if I'm going to fade the first break from balance after such a long consolidation, right? Like, especially if we're talking on a weekly swing time frame basis, if I'm going to not wait for the reclaim or not wait for something else, I'm just going to outright fade a move like that. I better have a good reason for doing so, or at least like maybe some sort of good structure below it, or just some good justification. Because generally speaking, the bigger the consolidation, the bigger the expansion. This is a big consolidation. This is now the second week of the expansion. We had like a one outsized move, and this is two days left until the weekly close. It just feels, from a trading point of view at the very least, early if you're looking at like weekly swing trading stuff. Do you agree with that? What's your view on the fact that we went sideways for so long and just broke down pretty much?
I do agree with that. It's TA wise, it's kind of it looks shit, right? There's only one redeeming factor for all of this, and it's basically that we have had black swan after black swan, and prices go down like 5 or 10%, and then they just settle, and they go sideways again. Like after every single like time something or someone gets blown out,
For
price either
now.
doesn't for now, yeah.
That's
But
my main concern,
price,
right? Like, I understand the argument of like relative strength that it's holding up given the magnitude of what's happening. That's like, if you're gonna make a bullish argument, it basically has to be that, right? Like, look, we
yes.
had the worst news that was fathomable and unfathomable, yet the market is kind of still range bound on the daily. So someone's willing to soak
Yes.
it up, etc., etc. Whenever I get into that type of thinking, which I think is like a reasonable premise, my paranoid mind basically starts going to, what if it's just inefficient and if it's lag, right? And it's not
Then you
relative
get
strength.
really
It's just
fucked.
the market is just gridlocked, right? And like no one knows what's
Yes.
going on, and the people panic late, and the prices we're seeing aren't quote unquote efficient, and that type of thing. And then eventually it catches up and looks sort of obvious in hindsight. That's my only concern. Why at least at the very least, I'm gonna. You know what? It reminds me of the decoupling thing almost, right? Where it's like, oh, look, there's like this short-term shift in this relationship, and therefore that signal. Like for me, that's scary. I want to see like better or more evidence of that. Like maybe a longer time period where we keep getting hammered with bad news, and the market actually starts to creep up and absorb it. Like something like that would be cool. But for me, like if someone just, if my mate at the pub were to ask me, do you think it's too soon to make a case for relative strength in the face of all this? I'd say probably, or at the very least, I'm not rushing for it, and I'm certainly not rushing for it in the absence of like really good trading setups. But maybe that's just my bias speaking. I don't know, like bias in terms of putting a lot of weight on where this kind of stuff happens. Like I can see myself if this kind of lag were happening, let's say at like 12k or 14k or some sort of weekly monthly structure, I'd be like, yeah, holy shit, we're cooking with gas here, right? Like it's at a good level. We keep getting hit with these tape bombs of bad news and the market's soaking it up. So, that almost gives me more confluence for my setup. But here, like immediately after the breakdown, the market just kind of volatility contracts and it's like, oh, well, look at this relative strength. I mean, is it, or is it just low volatility or something else? Like, do you kind of factor that into your analysis?
Yeah, I do. I mean, that's the reason why I'm not taking trades here. Like, this is just me basically making sure that I have a position in this thing. I do get more and more nervous when I don't have a position, the lower price gets. I don't know if anyone else is like that, but I just like when price
Yeah.
goes lower, I get nervous when I don't have a position. And it's the same when price goes up and I have a position. I'm like, what the fuck? I want to be out of this position.
Get me
But you
out.
want to keep holding it because you kind of make money, but you really want to be out. And it's the same on the way down. And that just like it kind of hit a breaking point where I'm like, okay, this is so low that if it's gonna survive, this is gonna be a good price. I mean, 20k already felt like that. The only reason why I didn't stick around with that is just because we didn't really see, like, I didn't really see what I wanted to see. But now that it's a little bit lower, I felt comfortable enough. But I do agree, like trading wise, this is quite tough. It's in the middle of nowhere. 14k is support, 19k is resistance. You have a really really easy kind of trade here where you either buy 14k or you buy the breakout of 19k, like basically the reclaim of the previous range. And both of them make a lot of sense, right? And both of them are very, very straightforward. And both of them are probably going to make you money. So like there's a reason why I haven't gotten my trading involved as well. It's just I'm buying, I think like in a year or two or three, I'm gonna have these buys are going to be profitable. I don't know if it's going to be the bottom or not, but they're not necessarily meant to be bottom buys,
Yeah.
and I can buy more if it goes down. So I do totally agree with you on the trading side of things. Just scrolling through through the time frames, you have monthly support at 14k, you have monthly and weekly support at 14k, and then you have on the daily basically a range of a long time being broken to the downside,
Yeah.
right? So that's all bearish. The only thing that you can put into the bullish camp is like we talked about the reluctance to go lower, even though we've had nuclear news basically, and like you said, you can't refute that. So
It's
on
tricky
that
out here, man.
front, it's very tricky. Yes.
Yeah. I just maybe I've just like gone numb to everything, but I'm still not feeling any urgency, you know? At least for me personally, to be like, holy shit, this like these prices aren't gonna last. And then those are the trades I like taking for the most part, right? Like price getting to a level that I think is important, and it looks very extreme, trading at an extreme. And I'm like, okay, this is like this isn't going to be a sticky type of price. I like doing business there, which is why it's been a quiet year because I've sort of memed myself for this. I guess it's aged well to some respect, but basically the entire way down, I'm like, oh, just reclaim 60k after what looked like a deviation. I'll get back in. Didn't happen. Do the same at 50 or 40, whatever. Didn't happen. Okay, 30k range low, do it. Didn't happen. Something good at 20k, like it didn't really happen. And even if it did, I mean, what happened afterwards. I'm almost glad I didn't get like a very good entry trigger there. And it's just like I've been wanting to get back in for the longest time, but the market sort of locked me out. So I definitely like concur with the point you made, where if the market just keeps going lower and you don't have a position that makes you nervous, it makes me nervous as well. But I mean, you have to just have a plan and deal with it, right? I think it's important not to like start moving your targets too much, especially if it's like news or fear based. That's the worst thing ever. When like 2-3 months ago you planned to do business at a certain level, and then it gets there when it's finally there and you've been rewarded for all your patience, you just change your mind like on the spot based on evidence that may not be super strong or shouldn't be like influencing your reasoning in the first place. Those tend to be like all of my good missed trades basically came from that. When I've pulled orders that I just sort of agreed with myself on days, weeks, or months beforehand. So yeah, for our trader audience, which I presume is most of you, clear reclaim is good. puke into support and fill sort of the inefficiency and reach multi-time frame support is good. 16k from a purely, TA point of view, that's not a level we spoke about before, and there's probably a good reason for that, right? So we'll let the market do what it may. ETH is a tricky one for me, and I want to get your views here because like Bitcoin quite clearly broke down. And it's below its June lows and below its range low, and so a bit in free fall. ETH hasn't done that, so it's still printing like bearish market structure on the weekly time frame of lower highs and lower lows, but it's pretty much retraced the origin of the merge pump, if you want to call it that little consolidation in June from that bottom at around 1.1k, and that's sort of where the market's holding. And that's not a new low, obviously. That's kind of like a double bottomy retest type of thing. Maybe I'm an idiot, but like that almost feels wrong, if that makes sense. Because historically, you and I are used to the fact that when Bitcoin corrects, like ETH overcorrects, right? It does so violently, but then it also sort of overshoots to the upside, and that's sort of why a lot of traders lean towards ETH more than BTC. Now it seems like this is either lag. It's the classic dilemma again, right? Is it lag? Is it relative strength? Does ETH just have different flows nowadays, and we have to throw out the old playbook of being higher beta to BTC, both to the upside as well as to the downside? At the moment, it's just like kind of chilling between support and resistance, like we wrote about Technical Roundup. Range low 1.1k. The resistance overhead is the supported broke at like 1.2, 1.3. But the fact that it's structurally so different from BTC, I don't know fully what to think of it at the moment. Have you given any of this kind of consideration?
Yeah, it's a little bit odd. It made a higher low essentially, like if you look on the weekly, and it's trying desperately to defend that, as in like trying to not close below 1,000. And so far, it's been doing that quite well, considering that everything went to shit. So yeah, I do agree with you. Same story, basically exact same argument. If you're buying ETH here, you're making my argument that I made for Bitcoin, which is basically the news should have had more of an impact. It's the same argument here. Basically, the Bitcoin breakout, like the Bitcoin breakdown, should have had more of an impact. But TA wise, it's still at resistance for me, like 1.2k ish is resistance. I want to see it close above 1.4 to show some strength. And it's the same with like ETH BTC. It's an interesting spot because it's been kind of hitting the range high over and over and over and over again.
For like a year
But
now.
I'm not, yeah, but I'm not necessarily entirely comfortable with going too aggressive here because it's still resistance, right? And it could range in this area for a while.
Yeah.
And honestly, there's just better looking altcoins out there. Most of them look like shit. And I know that you're gonna make fun of me for this, but for example, I've been trading Litecoin.
Here we go.
And that looks 10 times better. And then I'm just not.
Do you want the
interested
BTC
in
chart or the USD chart? Might be a
Oh,
redundant question.
the BTC chart is just insane. The USD chart also looks better to me, but that's arguable. But the
Why
BTC
does it
chart
look
is
like
obviously
that?
much better. I don't ask me. Like I'm so confused. I
Are
know
you in
that
the
the
Litecoin
Litecoin
Discord
halvening,
scrolling through
like
fundamentals?
no, like so there's a few reasons for this, right? So there's one, Litecoin and Dogecoin get mined together. So there's like a play there to be made. So whenever
Right.
Dogecoin kind of goes up, Litecoin has a little bit of like a narrative anyway. And there's also the Litecoin halvening in 9 months.
We know the big
But I
institutional
don't think any
allocators
of
are
those.
in for the Litecoin halvening. That'll really get them on board.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, I don't know is the answer.
Yeah.
I've been watching this. I've been commenting on Litecoin strength for a long time now, and it just refuses to go down. And when Bitcoin breaks down, Litecoin USD just goes sideways. When Bitcoin goes up, Litecoin USD goes up. It's a miracle to me. I don't know why anyone would want to buy Litecoin, but given other people want to, I just want to be on board too. I could get completely fucked for this, but I don't know. It just seems like if I want to be having any exposure, this is the best looking chart out there, which is really odd to say. Litecoin being the best looking chart out there
It's
is
like
something I
Bitcoin
have
went back to
not said.
2017 and 18 prices, and Don's watch list kind of followed along and went back there as well. You've got like a little time machine for your trading here. It's great. What was the setup on
Yeah, I mean,
Litecoin? For me, it looks a bit resistancy, but I'm just kind of eyeballing the chart. Was it like just a relative strength play? What are you looking for? Is it just like if it goes up, I'll sell it type of deal?
It's basically, if you look at the Litecoin Bitcoin monthly chart, and this is two memes in one, because one is an old coin and two it's a monthly, typical Don monthly chart. But you
fine.
open that one up and you kind of draw a support resistance level on the 1st of February in 2017, right?
I need TradingView Super
floor
Pro
that we had.
Premium to get that. Could go back that far. I'm joking, obviously, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But we had this kind of shelf, right? And it
Yes.
held. And this is a setup that I talk about on lower time frames all the time. I mean, this is one of the main setups that I use. It's basically when you have a breakdown that doesn't do shit, and then you get aggressive buying into it, kind of reclaiming the breakdown. And this is exactly that, right? It broke down after quite a while on 0.003, that kind of level.
Yeah.
And now it's reclaiming that. And I've just bought into that spike, basically, hoping, or like basically my setup is on the Bitcoin chart anyway, an invalidation below the current monthly open, and a target of basically 2018 highs, which is like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8x away.
Nice.
Against Bitcoin. Now, I'm not entirely with Litecoin, I'm not going to hold it forever, like I was talking about with Bitcoin. So if this doubles and I don't like what's going on, I will sell it. If it invalidates me, I will obviously sell it too. But I kind of like that Bitcoin setup. And on the USD front, if you go to the weekly, honestly, it kind of feels like this wants to go right before basically the whole FTX fiasco came into play. And I bought because, I mean, back when that was happening, I saw it break out. I saw the strength and was like, this is like, I missed it. And then it broke down because everything broke down. And I kind of took it as, okay, this is a gifted entry because I missed it the first time. Shouldn't really have gotten this entry. Could be wrong on that front. If it closes poorly this week or next week, I might get out of the position again. But I like it on the Bitcoin pair a lot. I like it a little bit less on the USD pair, but still looks quite good to me. Especially considering everything else looks as garbage as it does. And the cool thing about it, to add one more thing, is that no fund in the world is probably owning Litecoin. So you know that you're not going to get dumped on people that had money in FTX or whatever, because the contagion there is very, very low, which makes it like a little bit more interesting than it usually would be.
This is like the return to tradition trade, basically, where after the world's wiped itself out following like a nuclear apocalypse, we just start hitting rocks against each other and doing cave paintings, and you're like the first caveman back, being like, I remember this stuff, I've been here before. Do you have an USD target, by the way, or somewhere where, like, basically, if it breaks out, you'll look for what? Like, my eye is drawn towards, like, I don't know, 85 or maybe even up to 100 for Litecoin, if you're correct.
Take it. I mean, it's a high time frame trade. I'll try to take it to 150-ish.
Jesus, that's gonna sound insane to so many people, you know.
I mean, just like Litecoin didn't really have any action during the entire bull market this year, or last
That's
year.
A great sign.
Yeah, but I think there's interest there again, which could make it catch up. I don't really know. I just see the strength, and I see its high time frame strength. I mean, it's monthly on the Bitcoin pair, and it's during the biggest shitstorm ever. So I'm just willing to kind of give it some room. And then if it breaks to the upside and I like it, I will just keep holding it until it shows bearish signs. And no matter where that's going to be, right? If we get like bearish signs towards 80, I will sell it 80. If we're going to get bearish signs at 100, I'm going to sell there. If you get it higher, I'll sell it there. If my Bitcoin kind of pair, like Litecoin Bitcoin pair looks like shit, and breaks my setup, I'll obviously close too. So it just depends. If I see weakness, I'll close. If not, I want to hold this as long as I can.
Why did you choose to buy altcoins in the first place? Because like for a lot of people, the thesis for 1 year tax write-off, Bitcoin's close enough, cheap enough. I want to establish a core position because I won't buy it if it goes higher is understandable. But then you
Mhm.
degen into Litecoin and XRP, so you do have like at least there's some sort of short time frame market view beyond the investment one, right? Because otherwise you wouldn't be touching these things.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I do like XRP is pretty much the same story as Litecoin. It's a little bit less of like it's the same setup really. It's a little bit less of a good like it's not as good if you go on the weekly on XRP Bitcoin, you can kind of see what it's been doing. As in,
Yeah.
basically, you have the February highs, and it's kind of tagged that, and it's responded well to it after having had like two smaller legs. And I expect it to have a third leg, and that could take it to basically. Just looking at the chart, if it shows any strength and if the market just doesn't completely disappear, I could see it double basically. Just needs the narrative, which is that they're going to win against the SEC to hold steady. Not entirely sure if that's as interesting anymore, just based on the fact that we're going to get some regulatory heat off of the FTX fallout.
Right.
But it's still an interesting kind of narrative, and the chart still looks okay on the Bitcoin front.
Yeah.
So I'm down to kind of take a stab on that. And it's the same on the USD front as was on Litecoin. Basically, this ran away. Like I had on this one, I actually had a position, made quite a bit of money on the way up, sold it a little bit too early into like 0.47 or 0.48, if I remember correctly.
Hmm.
And then I was like, I just didn't like the look of Bitcoin. And then I sold it. And I mean, I wanted to position anyway. It's pretty much exactly. So I took a trade on the left side of the breakout, um, got nice gains off of it, and I wanted to stay in the position, but I was like, I really don't like the look of everything. So I sold it. And now I was like, okay, I like the position in the first place. I'm getting an even cheaper entry right now. So I'll just take it. It's not like these are the biggest positions for me in the world. Both, like XRP is quite, it's not that significant. Litecoin is a little bit bigger, but it's not like I'm betting the house on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are trades, and I like the Bitcoin pairs. Basically, USD pairs are a little bit more ambiguous, but I just felt like taking at least a little bit of risk on the trading side of things. I have risk on investing side of things with Bitcoin, but I don't have risk on the trading side of things, and I like those coins the best, so I just took those two.
Yeah. So the core thesis there is basically these things look strong against Bitcoin now, but even before the news, they were kind of breakouty, and you get another chance at an entry after everything got squashed on
Yes,
the news catalyst, basically, and they gave
exactly.
you the entries that were good anyway. Okay. What's the
Mhm.
target type of thing? Because you said you sold that like 47s, whatever, for XRP.
Yes.
Are you expecting, if you're correct, like a higher high, and then what does
Oh
that
yeah.
take? Okay.
$1 XRP seems like
Nice.
I mean, that's basically it's if you have another leg, and if Bitcoin actually goes up a little, I think that is actually quite reasonable. Obviously, it doesn't look like it right now, and my opinion can change in these. And I always have high targets, and when I take high time frame trades, basically what I'm always when I take these kind of trades, I'm betting on a major reversal, and then oftentimes other people see the setup too, and they buy in. Price goes up like 10, 15, 20, 30, 40%, right? And then I see something that I don't like. That's been the story of this entire year, basically. I see like
Yeah.
price action I don't like. And I'm like, I wish I could take this setup to where it is supposed to go, but this is a bear market after all. So I kind of have to take that as a serious sign of, okay, get the fuck out. And then I will get out. But when I don't get these kind of exit signals, I'm more than willing to take them to their original target, right? So it's
Yeah.
basically, if this was a bull market, this would most definitely go to the target, right? But it's not. And then you can kind of decide, okay, do you want to just be cautious because it's a bear market, even though the setup kind of allows for more, or do you not want to be? And for me, the story has been I've been cautious. I will probably still be cautious on this front, on both of these setups, but I like them, and I think there is quite potential there. It's just a question of does the market actually give it or not, and that I cannot say before it actually happens. So if I see some good price action or some bad price action, my views might change.
Yeah, this is the thing, right? Speaking to you, I know that like reading $1 XRP or whatever and all these Litecoin targets, like this guy is insane. But I know that literally one candle can change your opinion and force you
Yes.
to dump the whole position. So, these are kind of the classic strong opinions loosely held. It's interesting to hear you talk about the stuff you've been seeing and what look kind of actively looking for exit signals, etc. I feel much more like Stevie Wonder. I just haven't seen shit this year, and I just like I don't even know at this point. Like, do I even have sight? Like, it has to get put to the test at some point. But yeah, no, those altcoin plays make sense. There's a lot of actually divergence across the altcoin space where some of them just got basically the contagion coins disappeared below their June lows. Your Solanas, your Serums, I mean FTT, lol, whatever. But a lot of them are just holding up and didn't really like. If you were just to look at those altcoins where they are now, and you didn't know the Bitcoin price, you'd probably think it was around, I don't know, 18 to 19k and not like 16 after a breakdown, which is really weird. And again, the paranoid voice in my head again is like, is it lead? Is it lag? Is it relative strength? Is it inefficiency? Then I just close the computer and do something else. I'm kidding. I close the computer and then I open Twitter on my phone and see who's insolvent. That's been the name of the game for the last week or so.
Yeah.
S&P, this is going to be like, this is actually very funny to talk about because at one point you and I were memeing about how, the whole joke on crypto Twitter was like, have you had your macro podcast today, honey? Like, and people
Yes.
listening to 10 podcasts and 50 newsletters and 20 threads about the federal funds rate and CPI, PPI, PCE, all this other stuff. And now I haven't heard a peep about macro for the longest time. And actually, we got really good macro news relative to sort of expectations, and the S&P pumped, but we didn't really get to take part in that because we were too busy dealing with exchange insolvencies and counterparty risk and so on and so forth. Now, I've been kind of reading some of the Fed members give speeches and some of their public comments. So basically, part of the reason that the market rallied is that we had quite a beat. Inflation came in pretty cool compared to expectations. When we had that CPI, we'd already broken down by then, and the S&P really liked that. And then some, participants started to reprice where the federal funds rate target might be. So maybe it's even less than 5% or lower than expected. And all of that was basically like, look, inflation isn't as bad as we think, and that's like good for markets. It's like a bullish surprise relative to expectations. And then even today, this is the thing: a lot of some of it is being walked back. Not the data, obviously, but like Fed member Collins in the media today. Was literally throwing bombs, talking about 75 basis points remains on the table, and that's like crazy talk relative to what the market was pricing, saying immediately after that CPI, the 75 basis point hike kind of prediction or likelihood, it dropped to like 0%. And now suddenly it's back on the table. I don't see any clear evidence that inflation is decreasing. Another quote, obviously there's just one member, and I think Collins is a voting member. I'd need to check. I haven't been keeping up with my macro podcast, so you'll forgive the hole in my knowledge there. But, I think you and I discussed, and maybe this is like an open question, to what extent is the fact that we haven't nuked to lower levels being propped up or facilitated by, or at least aided by, the fact that legacy looks strong or has rallied quite a lot ever since that monthly close? Do you think that's still a relative consideration? Like, given the amount of crypto-specific catalysts and contagion and whatever else, do you think like macro still has a lot of weight in your in one's decision-making framework in general?
It kind of sadly does, yes. I think that's the scariest part for bulls that kind of step in early here. It's basically that this could just be the S&P pump that kind of held off the dump on Bitcoin. I still think it's relevant, and the S&P does kind of look good to me. As weird as that is to say, because it's been looking horrendous for months and months. Now it's actually holding monthly supports, weekly supports, all of that kind of stuff. We had the monthly level from like back in January of 21, that support level. We had that on our charts for ages. We're talking about a false breakdown into reclaim setup for quite a while, and then we got it. It retested that support and then just mega bounced. And we kind of had really shit luck on that front because we didn't get any of it, like you said. So yeah, that's one thing that I'm a little bit worried about.
Yeah.
It's the main reason, honestly, why I'm not taking aggressive trades on Bitcoin or ETH, or like in general, or in general any aggressive trades really, because yeah, if the S&P turns, and I think it will turn eventually, if not from this level right now, then from like another
Oh, I think I lost you for a sec there, Don. Well, I'll monologue this bit as he reconnects. I think the basic premise that Don is making is that there's at least a non-zero chance that a lot of the crypto strength, or at least the fact that we haven't dumped to much lower levels, has been propped up by the S&P. And it actually technically still traded very well. I mean, this is the retest on the weekly time frame of the monthly structure, and it provided like a perfect close and a perfect bounce. So I think under ordinary circumstances, the market, if we hadn't broken below 20k and had all the events transpire, the market would probably be at around 23, 25k for BTC and whatever, 1.8, 2k ETH, at the very least towards the range highs. Now we didn't get that luxury, and now that the S&P is kind of reaching a level or an area of resistance, I think Don, in terms of structure, has kind of this candle consolidation here at around the 38, 3900 handle, which is, I think, acting more as resistance, more as support than resistance. For me, it's comprised of this 38 to 4200 range, where this was support, this was resistance. The range midpoint comes in just at around 4K, 3980 or thereabouts, and that's sort of where the market is right now. So, even if it were to pull back to support or range between the range midpoint and the range low, etc., that could spill over into crypto. Oh, here he is. Hello.
Thank you, thank you.
No worries. I was basically making the argument that like S&P is sort of in it, like it bounced where it should have bounced, but at least in the
Yes.
short term, it could be in an area of resistance, even if it's just a flat 4K round number. I've actually got the structure on the weekly time frame. The 5th of September candle, the last green candle before we made the lower low, which ended up being the fake out. That there's like a bit of resistance there, and it's around that same range midpoint. So if this thing does pull back, that could kind of cost us in crypto world. Ideal scenario would be pretty much be range sort of continuation through the range midpoint towards the range high, and that could probably keep crypto up barring some sort of disaster. But the fact that legacy, there's no guarantee of a legacy bottom. This is a very technical bounce, if anything, in my opinion. That's still one of the quote unquote headwinds that probably isn't going anywhere sort of anytime soon. So I think at least my view is that macro is still worth paying attention to, because we may have sort of hidden in a sort of subtle way benefited from the fact that it didn't roll over and it's been very strong. But it's bittersweet that we're benefiting, because if not for what happened, we probably would have been at 24, 25k for BTC, at least at the
If
range
not
high.
higher, yes.
Yeah, and ETH at like 2k or whatever. But they took that away from us, Don.
They did, and it kind of sucks because we're in this weird situation that every time the S&P goes up, we get bad news, and every time the S&P goes down, we just go down with it. It's shit. And I do remember us on this podcast like weeks and weeks ago just saying, hey, just trade the S&P with the levels that we have because it's just so much better. And I do wish I would have followed my own advice on that front, because
Yeah.
holy shit, we would be printing. Whereas like right now, I am trying to get a few percent out of the market like every other month, and I'm just like I'm happy with getting 5% and then pissing off again. Whereas like the S&P, which has much less risk, right? And I think this is an interesting one because crypto people are starting to realize it now that this entire thing is quite risky, right? It's always the case when stuff blows up. People are like, "Oh shit, this is actually quite risky." They feel less safe when this kind of stuff happens, but it's always like this, right? I mean, it's what an unregulated market basically is. Just there's more risks of stuff going wrong. Also, more opportunities, obviously, much more. But yeah, this is kind of world we're living in. But the S&P, I still think is a driving factor, and it's the scariest part basically about this whole thing is that we had massive rally on the S&P, which reduces, I think, the potential for getting more, because I think the S&P is still in for like either bearish continuation or just ranging.
Yeah.
Which is scary when you look at Bitcoin being at levels where it really shouldn't be, right? 16K is very, very low. It just basically erased the like years of price action and years of progress by like just having free arrows blow up, Luna blow up, the whole Voyager, like everything that you can imagine just blew up, and then FTX just on top, like that's the cherry on top um, of shit news that we've gotten this year. I think it's might be one of the worst years that we've had
Oh yeah.
in crypto history. Might not be the worst in Bitcoin history, but it's most definitely, I think, the worst year in crypto history. So um, yeah,
Not great.
it's wild. It's not great, no.
Thing is, like, that, God willing, should we get another market cycle, which I obviously think is likely. If anyone calls the 2022 entrants or people who get to buy at these prices or the prices over the next 3, 6, 12 months, whatever, lucky, man, I'm going to be pissed because I'll tell you, it's been very hard to feel lucky this year. And
Oh yeah.
even people on all sorts of risk off end of the spectrum or whatever else, or the basics of advice of just survive, that's never been harder to follow than in 2022, you know? So yeah, it's definitely trying times to say the least, but I think we sort of covered the point well in terms of while it's tempting to just follow crypto headlines and there's still a lot that's unresolved and we don't know, unfortunately the available evidence still suggests that we have to follow the macro and follow the S&P because we're probably not going to go get too detached from it unless some sort of real crazy decoupling at really extreme prices takes place. I mean, I really shudder to think what it looks like if this monthly support ends up failing and we make new lows on the S&P. Like, what does that look like for Bitcoin? That's a rhetorical question because we know the answer, right? Like, it's a shit show.
Yes.
So yeah, I think the best case for this is that was some sort of bottom, even though it didn't like super feel like it might be, and then we just range and crypto can carve out its own bottom and we sort of become, that's one of the headwinds, at least not moving as quickly. But yeah, if this thing is like macro downtrend continuation type of thing, I still find it unlikely as a base case that we'll be immune to that. So
Yes.
get back on the podcasts.
One thing I do want to say though, like with all of these moves to the downside, right? I mean, Bitcoin at 60K, the market cap is quite significant, right? Bitcoin at 50K, that market cap quite a bit lower. Bitcoin at 16K is really not that big of a market cap, and all the other altcoins have obviously shed a lot of fat as well. So at some point there will be a time where we actually just go back to how we used to trade, which basically was that macro didn't matter too much.
Yes.
Just because the market is so small that you can throw it around. Obviously, the big moves will probably still be influenced by the macro picture, but there's going to be 2x rallies, 3x rallies along the way that don't necessarily align with the S&P, and there's going to be drops of 50% plus that don't align with the S&P either. It's just it hasn't really been paying to think that way. I know that it's going to come, but I don't want to speculate on when, basically, because everyone that's been speculating on like the decoupling or the okay, we're going back to like proper trading thing is either broke or just hasn't been trading, which is a good thing in that case, right? So like it's been terrible to wait for or like to anticipate the decoupling, and I don't want to do it. I think it's going to come eventually, and the longer this goes on and the lower we go, the more likely it
Yeah.
becomes. Like, let's say we go to 14, 12, 10K. I think we completely decouple at that point. Like at 10K, I cannot fathom a world in which we go to 10K and don't have like a massive bounce. For example, like if this goes in a straight line down to 10K, I think we'd go to 15K in a daily candle, basically.
Yeah, the 10 of us that are
Now,
left trading will push this thing, in the appropriate way.
yes, I mean, honestly, you just have to go through the stable coins and see how much money there still is in this ecosystem. Now, obviously, it's not all stable coins are crypto. Basically, are for buying crypto, which is kind of cool, right? The stable coins kind of did what crypto's been trying to do, which is branch out. Like the poker player has been using stable coins.
Oh yeah, the best thing we've come up with is fiat money. It's great.
Oh yeah, yeah, but it's the one thing that actually works proper, right? Which is
Right.
really sad. But yeah, so there's a lot of money on the sidelines still, and that's going to be interesting the lower the price gets, because at some point, um, if you have players large enough to just buy up 1 or 2% of the entire thing, you're going to see weird price movements, because it just takes 1 or 2 or 3 people to talk themselves into, okay, this is low enough to get massive bounces. And honestly, just from looking through Twitter and from looking through like what other traders are saying, there's still quite a few around. And a lot of people are just waiting for that, right? They're waiting for some strength. So you could see a massive bear market rally, I think, if you actually, like, if someone was willing enough to kind of pull the trigger. It's just a question of when is that going to be. So I wouldn't bet on this staying the way it has been forever, because it will not. But you also shouldn't be betting on it changing, because that's a shit bet to take.
Yeah.
Has been historically as well.
It's one of those also you'll know it when you see it sort of moments.
Yes.
And we definitely don't know it when we haven't seen it. So I forgot to ask one question, which is kind of pertinent. So we talked about the ETH relative strength, weakness, lag, lead, whatever. But if it does break down, I've got the zoomed out monthly chart. I think most market participants broadly agree where first shelf apocalypse levels are for BTC, sort of 14, 12 pre-market breakout. Where is that for ETH? If this 1.1k thing breaks down, there's no higher low, and it is indeed a lower low. Where do you step in on this thing? Where is the structure where you're like, okay, we've got like something here that's not hot air?
Oh, no, I mean, that's a sad question, because it's either 800 or 400.
Nice.
Which, I mean, 400 seems apocalyptic. 800's been tested already, but still, like, 800 looks pretty good to me.
Is this weekly structure or?
This is monthly, actually.
Monthly.
If you look on the weekly, there's really not that much there. It's like 800 is quite good. But below 800, you can all know. It's the same on the weekly and the monthly, really.
Yeah,
on the monthly and on the weekly, like, if you look on the weekly, best level is 300, 355. It's the most significant level. You go higher up a little bit, there's another one at like 470-ish.
Yeah.
And then there's one at 800, and there's really not that much else. So you kind of have to hope that this actually holds, because, I mean, 800 is nice, and then it just goes to shit, basically. And we've all already went down 70, like current price is 75% down from all-time high. If we go to 400 levels, that's 90%, and I don't know if you can necessarily, like, the thing is, if you talk about lower prices, eventually you talk about the entire ecosystem collapsing, right?
Yeah.
We're already getting there. So at some point, when let's say you argue that you want to see ETH at 355, so you can buy, I think at that point you might actually just be buying into contagion that takes the entire space down. So if you kind of want to bet on that, you're already wrong, because it shouldn't be at that level. And then it's probably gonna go lower. So I don't think that those kind of targets make a lot of sense, unless you think the entire space is exploding, and then you might as well, like, that's where you take your profit on your short, and then you get the fuck out, right?
Because it's like failed experiment collectible prices, basically.
Exactly.
Anywhere near that.
I mean, I don't think that makes any sense. So I think you want to see 800 hold. Anything beyond that is just not really tradable unless it's a wick, I think.
Yeah, I think unfortunately I agree. I haven't got that much news. I mean, I think everyone's like as clued in as the news, as they've ever been, given we've all been on Twitter 24/7 following the I'm hearing and rumors, yada yada. There are a few bits and pieces, and I think we both spoke about the FTX insolvency specifically on our personal videos on Weekly Open and elsewhere. So I think the only takeaway I've got from that, like not a new one, but I've been thinking about it more. Like, broadly speaking, there are two things that make a number go up a lot, right? One is just large pools of capital, usually institutional capital, deploying in a very discretionary and price agnostic way. And the other one is when you have rather opaque, credit markets that aren't always fully collateralized and basically give you cheap borrow so that participants can get levered to the tits and get super long stuff, right? It seems like as a result of this fallout, we're sort of likely to be diminished, if not deprived, of both of those things. So, crypto was already always like an institutional risk when it comes to a lot of these sort of allocators. It was seen as like a Ponzi .com bubble, whatever thing, before the FTX blow up. And now, if you want to make the argument that crypto is a scam, it's never been easier than after 2022. Like you literally have a highlight reel of like crypto being a scam. If you want to make that argument like very quickly and in a very sort of easy to define way, we've given it to you on a silver platter this year. So that's tough, and it attracts reputational risk for allocators who might otherwise be open-minded and interesting. Like when you see pension funds and stuff and major VCs marking their sort of investments to zero, that type of stuff like hurts, especially because we're no longer in that zero interest rate environment where you can get any amount of money like easily, right? Everyone's tightening their belts now. And also, just to be clear for our audience, I understand the difference between like a centralized exchange committing fraud and blowing up, and then crypto as in the tech or the smart contracts or the protocols that work exactly as intended. But at the end of the day, and then look, the JP Morgan of all people even made that distinction, right? That this isn't like crypto per se, this is TradFi style CFI fraud. Okay, and I agree with that on completely intellectual terms, but after the magnitude of this type of blow up, I completely understand if the people you're discussing or debating with don't have the goodwill to entertain that distinction, right? And they're like, well, what's the fucking difference? And also, I've been thinking about this argument a bit more. It's like, if that really isn't crypto, why did crypto let it get so big? Like if there was no appetite for this thing and it really wasn't in line with the ethos and the whole thing was just like completely detached from the stuff that people wanted, then it wouldn't be so big in the first place. Like obviously it was crypto to some extent, or a sufficient enough extent to get that big. So I agree with people on the intellectual level, on the sort of fundamental level when it comes to like the tech and the protocols that are working as intended, and all the good stuff that's come out of the space. But like, man, we don't have the political capital or the goodwill to force people into acknowledging those distinctions when so many people get hurt by something like this. So that's just like a very tough thing to think about for the sort of weeks and months and years to come.
That's basically, I think, where the maxis come from, because everyone hurts when this happens, right? It's not like if you held ETH, this has nothing to do with you technically, right? If you're an ETH maxi, if you're a Bitcoin maxi, it has nothing to do with you. It's just, I mean, a market participant or like one of the biggest exchanges just kind of took advantage of people and nuked the entire reputation of everyone, right? Bitcoin's reputation went down, ETH's reputation went down. This is not good for anyone in this space. And I do totally agree with you that I don't think you can really make the distinction even. It's just, if it's really not crypto, and this is I think the best point that you've made, is then we shouldn't have let it get this big. Because then, I mean, if it was a fringe case where like a bunch of VCs just put their money in and then no one of us bought it, it's just one thing, right? But it's not like that was the case. So I think the frauds and the scams are as much crypto as everything else, and we cannot really hide from that. I wish it was different. It frustrates me every single cycle, and I thought I'd seen it all, honestly, but this one just kind of like completely blindsided me. I'm shocked, to be honest. Like, it's just how the fuck. But yeah, it's part of the culture, I guess, because it's the place you go to if you want to become rich quickly. Just kind of feels like that. It's not necessarily the place that you go to. It used to be the place that you go to if you had like conviction in an idea and you thought like, okay, things could be done better. But nowadays it's the place you go to become rich quickly. And that obviously attracts these kind of people. And I think it's like, these kind of companies blowing up and doing stupid shit or scamming people is kind of a symptom of crypto more so than like it's the whole ethos of crypto has changed, and that whole, okay, we want to make as much money as we can in the shortest amount of time, That kind of ethos leads to this kind of garbage. So the ethos needs to change back. Otherwise, you can really not argue, hey, this is just not crypto. It's something from outside, especially when you see even the maxis tweet about price constantly, right? It's not like people are tweeting about, okay, hey, this changed this and that. You see all the maxis, even the Bitcoin and ETH maxis, they constantly tweet about price, more so than anything else, because
But
it's
only when it's going
what they
up,
care
right? When
about.
it's going down, it's like, oh, this is like a 10-year hold. It's, volatility
Yes.
is a function. Everyone gets the Bitcoin price they deserve, and so on. Yeah, it's. I was going to ask, what do you think the implications are in terms of both volatility and cycle timing following the blow up? Like, in terms of cycle timing, do you think this extended the bear market, and how long is it going to take for a new uptrend? If we do get a new uptrend, what does it, what's it going to look like compared to 2021? And then, yeah, in terms of just like those two things, duration of cycle and volatility expectations, has this changed your view at all?
I think in general, like it would usually, like this kind of thing would usually shorten the cycle because it leads to forced selling, right?
Hmm.
So if this was anything else, I would be like, okay, this is like the bear market is going to be over quicker, which is quite nice. The problem in this case is that this was very, very public, and it's basically the entity that made the most shilling efforts in the traditional world, right? So like, it's not like FTX is unknown in America. A lot of people, a lot of regulators know it, which kind of leads to bearish regulation, I think, or could lead to bearish regulation. So the argument is harder to make because usually, like I said, for selling, people get like completely freaked the fuck out. They're like, okay, crypto's just stupid, because I mean, I lost money here, I lost money there, or in general, like prices have been going down. I should have just listened to my friends and not bought it. And then they sell. People get rid of coins they've held for quite a while, and then prices go down sharply, and there's like a floor, and suddenly like things don't look too bad anymore. And then once everyone's sold that wants to sell, you have like a few core people left, and that's usually the end of the cycle, the bear cycle, right? But like I said, in this case, if you get bearish regulation, um, that could obviously hinder things. So I think it's really tough to say. And this is thanks to Bitcoin now being a little bit more of like a well-known asset, and we kind of have to take what we're given by the normies, by the regulators, by whoever else is looking at it, more so than we used to. So I don't know is the answer. I don't think there's a clear answer to it. Usually, in any other bear market, I would say, hey, this is going to speed things up. It's quite a good thing. Obviously, not in the sense that people lost their money, but in a cycle perspective. But in this case, could be quite bad as well, just given the regulatory fallout that could follow off of this.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. The leverage argument is good. I think it might almost be something like we might bottom quicker, but it'll take us a lot longer to go anywhere. Some version of that could also
I
be the
like
case.
that. Yeah.
But yeah, it's tricky for sure. And we'll just have to see. And that brings us to the news. I've got 3 articles here. We can go through them relatively quickly, of course. And again, if you enjoy Technical Roundup, leave a like on the video, and we appreciate all your support. If you're still here, if not, we also understand, to be honest. And we're going to keep the show going. So, Genesis, one of the biggest lending firms and highest profile lending firms in crypto, they're now seeking an emergency loan of $1 billion and trying to raise investment for that. They, sort of suspended client redemptions and all this type of stuff. And there's some contagion there because they're so big. A lot of CeFi Earn products, like in this case Gemini Earn, was affected, and they've also had to pause. So the classic type of stuff, like liquidity crisis, duration mismatch, all the normal stuff that comes as a result of this. I think they probably will be able to raise the 1 billion. I've been reading speculation about like, oh, will they have to dissolve GBTC to plug the hole? Because this is all owned by Barry, basically, right? Digital Currency Group.
Yes.
And Genesis already took a big hit from the Luna 3AC thing. They lent like, 200 something million to 3AC uncollateralized. And Genesis, DCG, their parent company, had to like bail them out. And now that they're trying to raise $1 billion for Genesis because of this like duration mismatch, probably put charitably. What I wanted to kind of bring up as well, like, dude, the timeline of events, if you look at their Twitter, it's frankly bizarre. And I say
Yes.
frankly bizarre, and it just means I'm having a hard time trusting centralized entities' statements about their liquidity conditions, because it goes as follows. On the 8th of November, they said, and this is, the day of the Binance FTX LOI, like all that type of stuff. This is the statement. With regards to today's market events, we have managed our lending book and have no material net credit exposure. In addition, Genesis has no exposure to any tokens issued by centralized exchanges. We continue to meet the needs of our clients around the world across all products. So you think, oh shit, they've killed it, Like, thank God for Genesis. The next tweet comes a day later on the 9th of November and says, Genesis has a trading relationship with FTX amongst other exchanges. Our exposure to FTX has no impact on our ability to serve our clients. And it's like, oh, cool, thanks. That's reassuring. Then on the same, the tweet before that actually gave the first insight as to their conditions. They said, we want to provide an update on where things currently stand with our lending business. In anticipation of the extreme market volatility yesterday, we hedged and sold collateral, resulting in a total loss of 7 million across all counterparties, including Alameda. That doesn't sound too bad, right? Considering like the magnitude of what's going on and the magnitude of the insolvency. Like, Genesis lost 7 mil, like, fine, another day at the office. Then that's all on the 9th of November. So, and again, the claim there is we hedged and sold collateral, resulting in a total loss of $7 million across all counterparties, including Alameda. And then it's the thing about no impact on our ability to serve our clients, etc., etc. Another day later, on the 10th of November, they say, as part of our goal in providing transparency around this week's market events, the Genesis derivatives business currently has 175 million in locked funds in our FTX trading account. This does not impact our market-making activities. And again, at the end, to re-emphasize, Genesis has no ongoing lending relationship with FTX and Alameda. So you're like, okay, that's cool. And then 2 days ago, the announcement comes out that they have to like pause the withdrawals, and now today or like yesterday, they're trying to raise $1 billion. That's an insane timeline of events, isn't it? Which goes from, yeah, we're fine. Okay, we lost a bit. Okay, we lost a bit more than a bit. Okay, please give us $1 billion. Like that doesn't feel too good. And again, people use the word contagion for everything nowadays, but this is one of those where, as one of the biggest lenders, there is a lot of follow-through impact, both from the liquidity that you can get in public and OTC markets. As I said, CeFi earn products. We don't know the full extent of their counterparties and all this type of stuff. This one is quite uncomfortable. And I'm just wondering if Genesis is going to stick around, right? Like, all their execs resigned around the Luna 3AC thing, and they tried to sort of like restructure the whole thing, but it seems to be sort of down only as far as Genesis news goes. I don't know. This one going on, that would be quite shocking. But the trend isn't good, at the very least, when it comes to what we've been hearing from them. I hope that this one kind of needs to get plugged, I think, as lazy a statement as that is. What do you think of this?
Yeah, I basically agree with you. Needs to be fixed. But yeah, I find it appalling that you make these kind of public statements that are clearly not true. I don't know like why this keeps happening in crypto, where people are like, hey, we're fine, and then a day later they're like, oh, we're not fine, give us like 50 million. And then the next day they're like, oh, we're not fine, give us $1 billion. I mean, it's fucking absurd, really. And but I do agree with you, like, this should really not go on. It would look really, really bad. And I don't know if you guys, like the listeners, know like how many crypto companies are actually involved in this thing. It's the biggest ones, really.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't want to see that go to shit. Honestly, usually this would be where I'd be like, I don't think it's going to go under. It just doesn't seem likely, but I've been very wrong the last time. So I will not jinx it again. I will just shut my mouth and see what happens. But I would like the hole to be plugged too. Not my hole, their hole. So yeah.
I was getting excited there for our next meetup. Anyway. This article says the FTX bankruptcy filings are a doozy. We bring you the highlights again from the block. I don't know if you read this, like this first day filing with the new CEO. My favorite anecdote of it is that this dude was involved in the Enron insolvency, and he straight out comes out and says, "This is the worst fucking thing I've ever seen." I'm paraphrasing him, obviously, but he says it's like in all his years and all his experience of doing these bankruptcies, this is the most disorganized one with the biggest absence of any types of controls, and even Enron wasn't this bad. Bankman-Fried had no idea how much FTX owes U.S. users. Secret exemptions and loose controls. Now there are now documents alleging that Alameda was exempt to liquidations trading on FTX. Approving all sorts of weird payments to employees and the top four and so on and so forth. Didn't have a functioning board of directors, and just seems like no one knew anything. I mean, the degree of mismanagement and fraud and deceit is just so mind-boggling to me, and it's so unbelievable. And the weirdest thing out of all of this, I don't know if you remember, like when Sam started tweeting about like what happened. First of all, like his Twitter has just been infuriating. Frankly, it's been like infuriating, and I don't know what meth-fueled version of reality he inhabits, but it's definitely not the one we share. There's something like deeply, deeply wrong with this person, and it seems to be getting worse. But like when he was trying to offer this explanation, one of the things he mentioned in the thread, he was like, "Here's what I thought our leverage was, and here's what the leverage actually was." And I replied to that, I'm like, leverage? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? These are like customer deposits, and they somehow got to like 8x leverage. You're the CEO of FTX, right? Like, this is an exchange that's supposed to just hold what your customers give you. Like, the core business model of an exchange is you match orders, right? Like, you provide a matching engine or whatever, you provide infrastructure to match buyers with sellers on your platform, and if they give you stuff to hold, you hold it for them. Right? That's it. That's the exchange business. And you take a fee for those things, specifically the matching. And so when he was posting these threads about like, here's where I thought the leverage was and here's what the leverage was in reality, I'm like, what fucking leverage? And then it became obvious what had happened is that there was just like no separation between Alameda and FTX, and there was just like one commingled net book that was being used for this empire. And it's just insane. I'm sure we could do like a 3-hour video or something on how, and more stuff is going to come out as I'm sure the bankruptcy proceedings continue. But this entire project is just so insane that I still can't quite wrap my head around it. Also, why on earth do you not just let, like, if it's true, the speculation that Alameda really got hit and needed a bailout around the Luna blow up, right? Why not fucking let Alameda fail? Explain to me, is Caroline's meth pussy really that fucking good that you have to sacrifice like yourself, FTX, the fucking industry, your credibility, everything in order to rescue a failed hedge fund? Like, I mean, the argument would be that at that point the whole thing was so commingled and together that you can't cut off one without killing the other, or some version of that. But man, in those cases, like you have a risk-taking business and then you have an exchange that prints money. Right? And your risk-taking business fucking blows up, you just let it die, man. You hit the stop loss on the business, so to speak, and you wind it down. And I actually think at that time it would have been a huge PR. I mean, it would have been like dodgy in the short term because people would speculate on, is FTX healthy or whatever. But I think bigger picture, if you get past that PR-wise, that would actually be great for the brand reputationally if Alameda was out of the picture. Because then you lay to rest all these concerns about like front running and listing and there being no separation between the two, and you can actually come out of it looking better if you survive. But the fact that both of them went down because the risk-taking business ate shit, it's just, the whole thing is completely unconscionable. Like, the more I think about it, it's almost the less sense it makes, I just have so many thoughts and feelings about this thing. And I just still feel like I haven't had the time to, like, process them, and I still feel like we're acting on incomplete information to some extent. And the whole thing is just extremely frustrating and disappointing, and our industry is already always on the brink, and a lot of it, as you said, it rewards scammers and bad faith actors, and it's a clown show. But this is just about as bad as I've ever seen it, and I'm just, I guess, very emotional about it is one way of putting it.
Yeah, I mean, to me it makes zero sense. Just thinking about it logically, it's the whole, like, you have something that works, right, and you just run it into the ground this hard, just to kind of protect your ego. I think that's basically that's at least what it feels like. This is basically what Sam's Twitter kind of tells me, right? Like, hey, I have this huge ego. I mean, he still does not seem to understand that he actually did anything wrong. still looking for excuses. It's absolutely mind blowing. Like I have no idea how you can have something that works and that is kind of like quite cool, and then destroy it in this kind of stupid fashion. I think that's honestly, I think the reason why so many people got fooled, because it's just too stupid.
Yeah.
Like you could not make this shit up. It's so stupid that it's just like anyone that would come up with that would be like, you'd say, hey, this person is insane. Like this makes zero sense. Like why would they ever want to do this? It just makes no sense. Like there's oftentimes when I see stuff, right? The Luna stuff, for example, where I'm like, okay, this makes sense to me, right? I mean, it's stupid that people, or in general, that this got so big, but I get how it happened, right? And it's the same with Free Arrows Capital. I see how you could, from a trading perspective, right, go completely insane, over leverage your tits, and then be like, I'm definitely right here, and then just keep on leveraging up while the market goes down after a mistake that we've made. I mean, everyone's kind of been there, right? It's kind of the trading journey that everyone goes through. Like you do a mistake and you lean into it instead of
Yeah.
kind of just being like, okay, fuck, this is a mistake. But the whole FTX thing is just like, it's not just one mistake, and it's infinite mistakes that make zero sense to kind of even like, I don't even get how you could get to that point. Basically, I like the ideas that people must have had to kind of make this happen is just completely insane to me. Like I don't think any sane person can actually understand why they made the decisions they made, unless you just say, okay, they're just completely crazy and they have the biggest ego in the world, and I guess that's just how it
And
is.
their
But
brains got fried by their dodgy doctor allegedly in Minecraft prescribing them things. You know, it's like you really start to
yes,
lean into it. But it is bizarre. Also, I think what part of what made it so shocking is that like a lot of the arguments as to why Alameda and FTX should have been more separate, they were based on perceived and in some case like stuff you could really see and feel edges that Alameda would have on trading on FTX, right? And like, you know, putting in big orders or being a big percentage of the open interest of like an altcoin perp on FTX, you know, it just felt wrong. It just felt like there was really something going on when you're trying to lift bids or hit offers at market with size at certain junctures or around certain news or on certain altcoins. Like the flow on there was like, if you talk to a lot of the low time frame click traders, it was different to say the least, right? And sort of reputationally predatory. And then the whole thing about, you know, the curse of the FTX listing, where, you know, there's like Alameda Research invests in this and then it gets listed on FTX. People like it became a meme in the community after long enough when you could kind of see how it would resolve on the price action side, right? And all the jokes from traders, and I've been guilty of this as well, saying like, you know, if you want to know that you're wrong, it's when you get a limit order filled in FTX type of thing. And then you take all of that and you add stuff that we didn't even know that, well, we speculated, or, you know, sort of there was this discussion about like what really is the degree of separation between FTX and Alameda, which is something we even fucking asked Sam when he was on our podcast all that time ago, right? And you take all these things, the fact that they can't get liquidated, they have every single legal and illegal edge. So people knew that there was like some incumbent advantage there, most likely. But all of those advantages are supposed to make you money, not lose you money, right? That's the really shocking part. That all the sort of shady or untoward stuff that people were discussing on Twitter. Yes, like there were material grounds for discussing them, but no one ever thought that those would be ways to lose money, right? If anything, they seemed really like extractive or predatory or whatever adjective you want to use, but they by no reasonable estimation were those ways to fucking lose money. So how on earth did they get in the situation where they have to get bailed out with customer funds? You know?
yeah.
It really boggles the mind, and I don't really buy the whole information asymmetry thing that Sam's trying to argue. Like, oh well, we had this bank account, and I thought the leverage was this much, and oops, like I'm sorry, if you're a fucking trader, Alameda, and your market making sucks, and you're doing your ass on your delta trading, and you get carried out by Luna, and somehow you just keep getting more money, right? Like it's not showing up in your P&L or something. Like at a certain point, you have to be like, guys, why aren't we at zero yet? Like, where is this capital coming from? I completely refuse to believe that sort of it's just this completely sequestered top four that did it, and the day-to-day people there had no clue. Like I just don't see how you could eat losses that big, and then mum's credit card replenishes your account, and you're like, oh, I guess we have more money now, even though we haven't done like a raise or anything else. The whole again, I'm like purely emotional about this. My thoughts aren't like well regulated. I haven't sat down and actually done like bullet point by bullet point. But the whole thing it fucking sucks for our industry, and it's stupid, and I'm just really mad about it. That's all I've got to say.
Yeah. I mean, I can't really add anything to it. It's just sad. It really fucking like I'm just sad about it because it's just so unnecessary. And it casts such a bad light on all of us. And yeah, I'm nothing anyone can do about it now. Just kind of stuck in this shit situation. And then we get like the tweet thread of like 50 tweets from Sam with like one letter in them, and I just want to like just beat the shit out of him basically with every single letter a little bit more. And like, how fucking insane do you have to be to make this after you've lost 10 billion of customer funds? I
Yeah.
do not understand, and it just enrages me on one hand, but really like it just saddens me on the other. It's just I don't like it. It frustrates me that every single cycle we have to go through the same shit, and we never learn. And for some reason, the scams get bigger, not smaller. We're like, I still remember when BitConnect was this big thing, this big meme.
Oh yeah.
And that was much smaller than the shit that we've been seeing this cycle, right? Luna was bigger than it, like by a multitude. This whole blow up was much bigger. So like, I just wish that the scams and the stupidness would just kind of go down with every cycle. But it turns out the higher the prices go, the bigger the scams become, and it's just very saddening because I think there's more potential in crypto than this. But it turns out like that's what what the focus is on, right? You just do stupid shit, you scam people. That's just like the industry standard nowadays, and it just fucking sucks, right? Because that's not necessarily a sector that I want to be involved in if this just keeps on happening. Because like if I want to, and this is the reason why I've never recommend crypto to anyone, right? Because this stuff seems talking about like Luna and BitConnect, this stuff seems very attractive to people that don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Like, right? Like if you have no idea about any of this crypto stuff and you hear the promises that people make, like Hex, like BitConnect, like Luna, you're like, holy shit, this is so cool. And then for some reason, all the big industry players, instead of just being like, hey, this is just not okay, this is not sane, instead of just staying away or even lobbying against it, they just lean into it because they smell that there's money to be made there, and it's just fucking sad. And at the end of the day, what happened this time around is that they got caught in it as well. Yeah, I mean, it's the sad thing is that it's not really them that are struggling; it's everyone else, and the entire industry is worse for it. So yeah, it is what it is.
Yep. Well said. Well said. I don't have anything to add to that. We should wrap. But thank you
Yeah.
for listening to us. Thank you for still supporting the show. Like, subscribe, all that type of stuff. Don's been tweeting altcoins. I've been pumping out content on the Cred channel, more educational things. And the newsletter came out this week. All the usual stuff is still, we're still here, basically, and hope you will be as well. That's all from us. Have an excellent weekend, and we'll speak to you next week.